welcome to Liverpool Transfer Talk on Football Talk Podcast. My name's Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. Watch Long was interrupted earlier on today due to the thunderstorms taking place in America. So we've and moved on and decided to do a Liverpool Transfer Talk show where there have been quite a few rumors circulating. So one in particular where there could be a second bid in terms of Yan Diomande, plus there's other links with other players and also some players that could be departing from the club. So what we'll do during the show, we'll speak about those rumors. But before we begin, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Now let's speak about the first rumor, and that is regarding Yan Diomande. As we all know, last week Liverpool made an opening bid that was turned down by Red Bull Leipzig. The rumor right now is that Liverpool are preparing a new bid that will be worth over 100 million euros, which is about 95 million pounds, to advance in negotiations for Yan Diomande. Red Bull Leipzig insist that they will not sell the player this summer, and they would like him to stay for at least one more season. But Diomande is open to leaving the club. Liverpool will be pushing to get Diomande's signature. But at the same time, Red Bull Leipzig are also anticipating PSG to get involved and place a bid for themselves. At the minute, the original bid got rejected, but Liverpool plan to bid again. So my thoughts on that rumor, it makes perfect sense. Of course, Yan Diomande is a player that has to be regarded as our top priority signing for this summer. He will be coming in to replace Mohamed Salah on the right wing. So therefore, we need to do everything in our power to try and get this young player over through the line. I know there's some reservations in terms of his age profile, and people think he might not be ready for the jump to the Premier League, and also the transfer fee, where it's a bit of an extortion price. But unfortunately, that is the market. When you are trying to buy a player of his quality, and let's put age to one side. I'm not saying it's not a factor. It certainly is a factor. But let's look at the quality of the player. The player, for me, has a very high ceiling, and the way he plays is not a profile I think you can just go and find anywhere across the world. So for me, he's a very special talent. He's a player that I feel like will present a different dimension to our game. What I saw in the previous game, which was of course Ivory Coast was the journey, was that he played on the left wing. He's predominantly played right wing for large parts of his career, but he can also play on the left wing, which for me is a huge bonus because we had Mohamed Salah, who was predominantly a right winger, even though he was left footed, he never really played on the left wing. Yan Diomande gives us a different dimension in terms of his style of play, where if we wanted to switch up where players interchange and present a bit of unpredictability to the opponent. We can do that with Yan Diomande. He can start on the right and then quickly go over to the left and then vice versa. So I feel like that's something we've not had for a very long time. And I feel like that's the kind of skill set that makes him a very special talent. And in terms of his ceiling, the way he plays, of course, there's areas of his game that he needs to improve on. He's still very young. He's only 19. So there will be refinements that needs to be done in regards to his final pass or finishing, but that will come with time and experience. So for me, I know there's a lot of fans that are not happy with the rumor or the reports that we're trying to bid over 100 million euros. I'm going to give it to you in a more of a simplistic viewpoint. It's not my money. It's not your money either. So we shouldn't be too fixated in terms of how much it's going to cost. That's for the club to figure out. If they feel like he's value for money, and if he is, then the club should do everything in their power to get him on board. Because we need to think about us in terms of making sure next season we compete again. Last season, I don't want to call it a write-off, but it feels like it because we didn't act like reigning champions. We went into the season with huge expectations. We spent a lot of money. We signed a lot of top quality players, but it just never worked out. And I think it's quite evident in terms of why it didn't work out because we had a coach that had a very defensive approach in terms of style of play, and because of that, it wasn't very helpful with the players that we assigned. They weren't tailored to their skills, so therefore you're not going to get the best out of players that you've just brought into the club. So I feel like that was one of the downfalls in terms of why we weren't successful. And of course, the former manager and Arnold Slot, he had other ideas, different ways of playing. Didn't really read the room in terms of how the Premier League was evolving as it became more of a physical game, a game more focused on set pieces, whether it's from a defensive or an attacking standpoint. And that's something, maybe the coach and maybe the club misjudged, and they've to learn a hard lesson, because even though the players we signed, I thought on paper were really talented, they weren't quite the right fit for us. So this summer is going to be huge in terms of how we compete going forward. And with a player like Yan Diomande, I feel like you've got a long-term player here. He's not here for the short to medium term. If you're signing him, you're giving him the keys to be Mohamed Salah's successor, and that should be presented with great honor, because he's not just coming in to be a squad player; he's coming in to take over in that sense. So for me, I rate the player. I think he's very talented. I think his ceiling's very high, and I feel like he's exactly what we need in the right wing. But let me know in the chat what you guys think. Are you impressed by his performance in the World Cup? Are you a bit delusional in terms of why we're bidding so much for him? Let me know your thoughts in regards to Diamante. Before we move on, just going to quickly read some of the comments there. Wayne says, big up Aussie in chat. Double D, big up Double D says, games restarting. Wayne says, the thing with Diamante deal is that if we get him, everyone is going to put so much pressure on him to hit the ground running and be world class because of that price, which could hinder his progression. I understand what you mean, Wayne, in terms of the expectations, but he seems a bit of a special character where I don't think nothing phases him. He seems quite fearless, has a very much tunnel vision approach. So with that, I think, if we can work on his mentality in terms of making sure he's taking care of his body, he's doing the right things in training, and he's got his mind right, we can definitely nurture a top quality winger for years to come. So that will come with coaching, and that will come with, training and making sure he's doing all the right things. Of course, there's always going to be outside noise regarding, how much, you've signed. We can sign a player for 10 million. There's always going to be pressure on that player. It's because they're joining Liverpool Football Club. It's not always a price. Of course, with the price, you do get added pressure as well in terms of expectations, or you're expected to hit the ground running immediately. But I think, we have to give the young man some time if he was to join Liverpool. But I don't have any reservations in terms of how he'll do if he was to join Liverpool. I think he'll be an instant success, and I think he'll surprise a lot of people as well. But that's just my thoughts there. Reese, pick up Reese. He said, "Do you think Diomande signs this week?" No, I don't think he'll sign this week. I think there might be element of progression in terms of further talks or a bid that is being discussed. I don't expect us to conclude with a done deal with regards to Yan Diomande. I'd be very surprised, pleasantly surprised if I'm being honest with you. But no, I don't think it'll be done this week. Moving on, let's speak about Curtis Jones. Now, we're getting two types of reports right now. The first is something we've heard in the last 24 hours, is that Liverpool have turned down Inter Milan's offer of around 25 million euros, which is about 25 million, so which is about 20 million pounds. And Liverpool have said that they won't do business unless the Italian champions meet their valuation of around 40 million euros, which is about 35 million pounds. So the big question is, what do Liverpool do in this scenario? Because we've got a player here that is on his final year of his contract, and we don't want to make that mistake again with regards to letting players leave on a free. It happened with Trent Alexander-Arnold. It happened with Konate. I don't want it to keep happening again and again. Of course, Mohamed Salah just left on a free. Robertson has also left on a free. So for me, this is not the way to operate as a business, and I'm quite surprised how FSG are allowing this to happen. When you're known to be astute negotiators or astute businessmen, that's not the way to go. Why would you allow players' contracts to run out and let them go on a freeze? You've not regained anything from their work that they've produced over the years. And they might argue and say, well, look, we bought them for £30 million. They've played for about 6 years. It's kind of weighed out, maybe in that regards. But if that's the case, why not just sell the player a year before that contract expires, and then you can literally recoup that money that you spent originally? So I don't know what it is with FSG. I feel like they don't know that you can extend contracts. It is something that is allowed. There is no limitations. You can extend as many contracts as possible. So I'm not sure, why we're operating this way. But this is a big decision from Liverpool in terms of what they're going to do with Curtis Jones. Because I've always felt like, if he was to move, he'd want to move abroad. He'd want to move away from Liverpool, from the Premier League, and maybe a new atmosphere, a new challenge, a new lifestyle that Inter Milan would offer is a bit more of an appealing project for him. But at the same time, if the club feel like valuation isn't being met in terms of the bids that have come through, then they have to think with an alternative plan. Do they keep him for another year and give him a new contract, whilst the season is on the verge of starting, or do you let him play for 1 year and then let him go on the free? For me, the latter does not make sense. I still feel like he's a player of value. Some may agree, some may disagree. I feel like Curtis Jones has shown last season what he's capable of. And I feel like under Iraola, I genuinely believe he can cook in this team. I feel like he can have an instant impact. I think he can play a lot more games. I wouldn't say he's the starter immediately, but he's definitely in and around the squad. He'll definitely be played in rotation. He'll be heavily involved. You know how the season goes. If there's one or two injuries, those players literally come in the mix immediately. So for me, you know, and it's not just, in terms of where he's from. Of course, he's a scout, so that is a huge plus point because he knows what it means to represent for the club. But I do feel like we need to be smart with this move. If we were to sell Jones, 20, 25, £30 million is not a lot of money in this market. Elliot Anderson is going away, or he's been linked to a £130 million move. I'm not saying they're on the same level, but they're not miles apart, in my opinion. So for me, what are we going to do with that little bit amount of money? So I feel like if they value Curtis Jones as a player, they just have to offer him a new contract. He's not exactly old. He's not, towards the latter stage of his career. He's in his prime. He's mid-20s. This is the perfect time to give him that new contract. And I feel like he will take the opportunity with both hands and really, do everything in his power to try and force his name into the team, but also more importantly, do well for the club. So let's see what happens. It's a bit of a strange one. It sounds like Liverpool aren't happy with the low ball tactics that Inter Milan are presenting. They're giving us little peanuts here and there to try and increase the bid, but they're not really budging in terms of the valuation. So it'll be interesting to see, what Inter Milan decide to do. Are they going to increase the bid? Do they walk away? Only time will tell. There's also other reports today suggesting that Aston Villa have entered the race and they would like to have some talks in regards to a summer move for Curtis Jones. And of course, the valuation is around 35, £40 million, which I don't think is a lot of money. Some will say, well, he's in his last year contract. Why would anyone pay £40 million? 40 million is not a lot of money in this market. As I use Elliot Anderson as the example, it's Man City bid £125 million. It got rejected. So, the player's had a good season. He's not worth that price. 40 million is dirt cheap, if you ask me, even if he's got 1 year left. Van Heck has just joined Tottenham for 52 million. He had 1 year left as well. So I think the 1 year remaining of a contract is not too much of a big deal. Of course, it reduces the price a little bit, but it's not like you get him for top price. It doesn't. I don't think it works like that anymore. So for me, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Curtis Jones. Of course, he's not playing for England right now, so he's probably on holiday. I'm sure he'll report for preseason very soon, in about a week's time, and hopefully we'll get some sort of indication. If Iraola really wants him to stay at the club, I'm sure he will present his ideas and his plans for the player. And I'm hoping Curtis Jones stays. I know some fans will disagree with that, but I think it would be the right thing to do. Gives us a bit of stability in the middle of the park. And I feel like what we can do is just add quality what we have, add another number six. And I feel like that really cements us in terms of having a strong midfield department. And I feel like we can challenge for all the titles next season if we were able to keep the core of our team. But that's just my thoughts. So let me know what you guys think about Curtis Jones. Wayne says if we get Diomande, whatever numbers he put up in his first season should be the starting line to improve on in the coming years, no matter the price tag. Is Milan the only team looking at Jones? In terms of clubs abroad, yes, Inter Milan are the only club that are showing a strong interest. When I say strong interest, they've been in talks with the club for a number of months now. But I think in terms of the UK, in terms of the Premier League, there are interests from the likes of Aston Villa, Tottenham. I think there's one more club as well, but those are the teams that are looking at his signature. But I don't know if Curtis Jones would want to stay in the Premier League if it's not for Liverpool. So, it will depend in terms of what he wants to do. I think Jones goes this summer, maybe not Milan, but somewhere. I'd keep Jones, but I think the club want to cash in on him. I get that impression as well, that I think they want to cash in on him. But for me, I feel like it'll make more sense to give him an extension, see how he does this season. If he doesn't live the heights, then we can sell him next summer with, on the basis that he still has a contract and we can get a bit more money from him in terms of the sale as well. But that's the way I would look at it. Ozan, we got Ozan as always. Said, bro, Barcola finally playing football live again after a huge lightning storm today. Ozzy, yeah, I was waiting for some resolution for that game to restart, but because it was close to my scheduled time for this show, I had to just end the stream there. But I might put it on in the background actually, but I don't want to distract myself at the same time. So yeah, I'll catch up with the highlights or I'll catch up with the second half after the show. Now, speaking of the man, perfect timing there in Bradley Barcola. Now, the current news that we're getting from Fabrizio Romano, who of course is a very reliable journalist, is that Liverpool are maintaining contact with Bradley Barcola as there is a positive feeling about potentially signing him this summer. The talks are in an advanced level, but there has been conversation with his agents and the Liverpool hierarchy are discussing if it's worth making a move for Barcola. But I think that it also plays a part in terms of seeing what happens internally. If players decide to move on, maybe Barcola is listed as the top of the shortlist to replace a specific player within the squad. Um, but what that tells me is that we've got the possibility of seeing both Diomande and Barcola at the club. It's not just one or the other. It could potentially be both. Of course, that would depend in terms of outgoings. If Cody Gakpo was to leave, then that scenario makes perfect sense. If Cody Gakpo stays, and of course Rio will be around as well, maybe we don't go for left wing and we just focus on the right wing this summer. But regardless, it'll be very interesting in terms of what the club does. Arsenal apparently are also preparing a bid of 80 million euros, which is about 75 million pounds, as they're trying to step up their interest in signing the PSG winger. Now, would he go to Arsenal? I'm not going to just be a very biased Liverpool fan. Of course, Arsenal is a very realistic option for him. If you're looking at their squad, they don't really have a mainstay left winger. Yes, they have Martinelli, they have Trossard, Eze can play on the left as well, but none of them have made that position their own, especially if you're looking at last season. So for me, that's still a vacant spot in their team. Of course, the right wing is covered by Saka. Up top is Gyökeres, but of course, maybe they'll address that, or maybe they think he's the man to take them forward. I'm not quite so sure. So the left wing position is definitely vacant for someone to come in and make it their position. So it's going to be interesting, how both teams will present the project. I think with Liverpool, you would assume that it would be an appealing project for any player to join. Of course, we can paint a picture. Look, left wing is vacant because Cody Gakpo is leaving. We've got a young player in Ruben Gamal, but of course, you guys will be fighting for a spot. But at the same time, he's young, he's learning his trade, so you'll be the one to look towards in terms of leading the line or leading by example. So it'll just be interesting to see, how we propose that move to Barcola. At this stage, it's probably very early stages because if it is based on Gakpo leaving, then we can't really, speak too much of it. We just have to wait and see in terms of what happens. But hey, I'm still pretty much on that camp that we should be signing Bradley Barcola. I feel like he's the perfect player that we need in our team. He's got raw pace. Of course, there are games where he's not heavily involved, but he's one of those players where give him a moment and he's able to convert, and that's what is remembered at the end of the day, isn't it? If you score a goal, if you provide assists, doesn't matter about in terms of what contribution you made early in the game, as long as you've helped with the end result, which is of course winning the match. So let's see. I feel like the Barcola rumors are not going to slow down. We'll probably have it as a regular piece of the show or transfer talk shows that I'm going to do. So let's see what happens in regards to Bradley Barcola, and let's see where he moves this summer. Honestly, on my days, what a banger goal by Barcola. Just kidding, Ozzy. To be fair, I've turned my TV off, so I don't want to get distracted. But yeah, I'll have to catch up with the match later on. When it says, I said the other week, I think we get both Barcola and Diomande. But if Barcola comes in, will it stop or slow Rio's progression? And if so, will he want to leave? I don't think it should block his path. And I feel like maybe it's just us Liverpool fans always analysing our squad, where when we see an emerging talent, we're thinking, he's the next best thing, but let's not buy anyone, let's not block his path. Whereas you see other clubs, they buy two, three players per position, and they're competing in all cylinders. That's why Arsenal won the league last year. I don't think they played amazing football, but what they had was plenty of quality and depth in their squad, and that was the deciding factor. So for me, that's what we need to think about at Liverpool as well. If Barcola and Rio Gamal were in the same team, there's nothing to suggest that the other player can't play on the other wing. Both players have shown that they can play on the right wing as great as they can play on the left wing as well. So if that's the case, then we're not really blocking anyone's path. And if you're good enough, you're going to, eventually step up and play to that level. So I think it shouldn't have an impact on him. But only time will tell. But I would love to see Barcola at the club. I think he'd be a great fit. Um, and you'll see the likes of Rio and Josh Abe as well, learning from these type of players. So yeah, let's see, what happens this summer. Other says Mbappe, Barcola, Alicia, and Dembele all starting together. France is blessed. Yeah, they've got some great talent there. Martin, we got Martin says Spurs are spending well come next season. Will they win a league? So will they win a trophy? No, I don't think they'll win a trophy. They need to make sure they survive in the Premier League again. I know they're trying to sign Tonali. I think it's 100 million pound, but I believe it got rejected. They want Cody Gakpo for about 60 million, which we'll talk about very shortly. Um, but no, um, I think they've got a lot of work to do. They need more volume of players to join this season because they had a lot of injuries last year. I'm sure they'll ship a lot of them out as well. But no, I don't see them being transformed all of a sudden. I don't think that's how it's going to work, to be fair. Uh, who gets Salah number next season? Difficult to say. Depends who comes. If you've got Barcola and Diomande come in, for example, I can see Barcola potentially take the number 11 number. What could we do on Monday? So it depends on who we sign. I think they will um make that decision. I know there's been rumors that it could be Rian Gamoa, which is fine as well, but I wouldn't give him that number at this stage because it's far too early, in my opinion. For him to get number 11 at the age of 17. I don't know. I feel like you've got to do a lot more in order to get a prolific shirt number like a number 11. But yeah, that's just my take on that one. Um, so shout out to Born and Red, who had Fabrizio Romano, I think, last night, and he, definitely dropped a few bombs. One of the bombs was actually the Barcola news that we just spoke about, but another one was regarding Mateus Fernandez, and he's been strongly linked with PSG and more so recently with Manchester United. It looks like he might be going over there. But Fabrizio Romano spoke to Born and Red, and he said to the guys that Liverpool made an inquiry a couple of weeks ago about the status of Mateus Fernandez. So for me, that shows you what kind of profile the club are looking at, which is a positive. Whether we get Fernandez or not, I think it remains to be seen. Um, West Ham want to get around £80 million. Maybe that is past our threshold in terms of valuation. So if that's the case, we'll probably look elsewhere. Maybe a Buwadi, which makes a lot more sense because he's available for about £50 million. And I feel like he's got a very high ceiling. So for me, that would be the first choice player I have in mind in regards to the number 6 position. I did like the look of Lamine Kamara, but I feel like Buwadi has a bit more to his game, and I feel like he'll be more suited for what we want in our midfield. So let's see, what happens. But for Mateus Fernandez, if he goes to United, I'd be a little bit disappointed because he's a very talented player. But let's see, what the future holds for the Portuguese midfielder. Mine says Messi wins the World Cup again if he stays fit. Yeah, let's see. Let's see what Argentina can produce in this tournament. Now, rumors circulating in regards to Florian Wirtz. Apparently, Chelsea are monitoring Wirtz's situation at Liverpool, with Xabi Alonso keen on a reunion with the German playmaker after their successful spell together at Bayer Leverkusen. Any move would depend on Enzo Fernandez's future, who is being strongly linked with a move to Real Madrid. Uh, so my take on this, I don't think there's any truth to it. Of course, there is a connection there, with the player and the coach. They had a good spell at another club in Bayer Leverkusen, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be reunited in that scenario. So I don't think there's any truth to the rumor. I don't think Liverpool plan on selling Florian Wirtz anytime soon. So for me, this is all speculation and it's all paper talk, and I don't see Florian Wirtz leaving Liverpool anytime soon. Martin with the comment says, will Rio get more first team for Liverpool come next season? I think he will. Under Iraola, I think he'll get a lot more game time in comparison to what he did or what he got in the end with Arne Slot. I could be wrong, but this Fernandez talk, I think, is his agent trying to get a good price. Potentially, it might be just him trying to generate more interest. But the club, in terms of West Ham, they've said at least 80, 90 million pounds, which is high, but he's a very talented player. Mine said Don Silva to Chelsea, 200 million asked for. Verts to Chelsea, ladies and it is. They try to put the pieces together, but there is no real correlation whatsoever. So yeah, I agree. I think that's lazy journalism as well. Cody Gakpo. Now this is the one worth talking about. So apparently, Tottenham have opened talks with Liverpool in regards to a potential move for Cody Gakpo. But Zerbi is very keen to bring the Netherlands international to North London and views him as a key part of his project. Spurs are preparing a significant offer of around £60 million, and have already proposed a contract that will run until 2031 for the winger. So my take on this, um, if the opening bid is 60 million, I feel like we can hold out and try and get 70 million. That's me being a little bit selfish or a bit greedy there in regards to getting as much money as possible. But what I would say is that we've got a player here who is certainly showcasing his talent in the World Cup. People have definitely been paying attention in terms of how he's performed so far in the tournament. So that puts us in a good position. It gives us that bargaining in terms of making sure that whatever bid we receive, we can just say, look what he's doing in the World Cup. He's cooking there. So we can, of course, demand for a bit more of a higher price. I think 70 million is, you know, a decent amount, but if you look at the market, you could probably get a bit more. So 70, 80 million is the kind of range I would look for. Let's see, how serious Tottenham are. I do think they want to sign a player like Gakpo. They don't really have a proper left wing in their team, especially since the departure of Heung-min Son from a couple of years back. So I feel like they will definitely want to try and get Cody Gakpo over the line. He's already Premier League proven, so there's no settling in period required, and he can definitely hit the ground running immediately. So let's see what happens with regards to Cody Gakpo. If Liverpool were to sell him, then I feel like it would make a lot of sense for us to try and get another like for like replacement. Let's not do what we did last season, where we sold Diaz and then technically we promoted Rio to the first team, but we didn't really sign the replacement. So for me, that was a big mistake from our part. Martin said, "Give me your Premier League pick for top seven." I'm not gonna give that pick until we see what business the clubs are doing. At the minute, it's going to be pretty much the same. That's the way I would look at it. For me, I need to see what business the other clubs doing, then I'll be able to give you a better prediction. Whereas with today's market, we can get over 100 million for Gakpo. If he keeps banging in the goals for Netherlands in the World Cup, yeah, I'm sure we can ask for a lot more money in regards to his transfer fee there. Moving on, let's talk about Alexis McAllister. Now, the current rumor is that Jose Mourinho has identified McAllister as his priority midfield target for this summer. He's viewed internally as the ideal player to orchestrate Mourinho's new look, new look side, with the club comparing his profile to a Tony Cruz. Rumors are open to have talks with Liverpool to assess the conditions of a potential deal and also see if McAllister would be willing to move over to the Bernabeu. So my take on that rumor is I think there's definitely something there. I don't think it's the first time Real Madrid have made any contact or have had any dialogue with either the club or player regards to this move. I've always got the assumption that they have spoken to McAllister in the background, and I feel like because of that, he's always mentioned that he wants to play in La Liga one day. So this could be the time for us to move him on because I don't feel like he's quite good enough for what we need in our midfield now. We need more physicality, we need more of a presence, we need energy, we need drive, we need determination. And unfortunately, even though he's very technically gifted, he doesn't quite have those elements or not to a high level anyway. So I feel like if he was if he was to move over to a league like La Liga, I think that'll suit his skill set even better, and I think he will definitely perform to his level once again, as it won't be as intense or as physical as it is in the Premier League. So let's see what happens with this rumor. If there's any truth to it, I think in terms of transfer fee, I would say at least 80 million pounds. If Elliot Anderson's going for 120, I'd want it to be around that range. But because it's Real Madrid and clubs abroad don't normally spend that kind of volume of money, I mean 80 million pounds is the right valuation for the player. So yeah, let's see what happens in regards to the signing there. Now moving on, Liverpool are being linked with a right back, which is interesting, and the player is Andre Ratiu. He is currently the right back for Rayo Vallecano. The defender has a 25 million euro release clause, which represents an excellent value, and Liverpool could make a move if they decide to strengthen that position. So my take on this rumor is that his profile, he's 28 years of age, so for me, could be a little bit old in terms of what we want as a right back. But having said that, maybe the club are looking at a stopgap signing, someone that has a bit of experience. And until we don't see Conor Bradley back in the first team mix, this player can basically cover the minutes until he returns, but also provide the experience and the quality that we need in our fullback position. I watched a few videos of him. He looks like a very interesting player, very skillful, got tricks, got a bag of tricks to be fair. He's not making players here and there. He's a decent dribbler of the ball, good at one-on-one defending, has a decent cross on him. So he would be a smart signing. And the reason I say he would be a smart signing is because We don't want to go crazy in terms of spending money on a right back. I think the club would rather spend 20, 25, 30 million max, which is probably why we were linked to Dumfries before he made that move to Real Madrid. So maybe that's the valuation we see in order to get another right back. So we'll see what happens. But in terms of profile, he's a decent player. He looks very talented. My concern would be the age. If that is that the kind of age bracket that the club would be happy to get on board. I'm not so sure, but I do like what he presents. In terms of his skill set, he's very talented, very skillful. I watched a video where he was twisting up the likes of Bellingham, Vinicius Junior. So he's definitely got an upper hand on some of the best players in the world. So it might be worth watching that for that compilation if you haven't seen it already. Um, Moving on, a player that's made a name for himself in the World Cup is Borussia Dortmund midfielder Felix Nemeka. He is a powerful midfielder, 6'4", 25 years of age. Had a great season for Dortmund and has been even more impressive in the World Cup for Germany. And apparently, Dortmund value him at £50 million. And you've got the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona also monitoring his situation. So my thoughts on the player, very talented. From what I've seen in the World Cup, looks very, very talented. An absolute giant, 6'4", 6'5". God knows, he looks really tall. In terms of the profile of the player, in terms of, stylistically, he gives me Gravenberch vibes. So because of that, I don't think we need another Gravenberch type of player. I need a number 6 in our team. I need someone that's going to be an enforcer, someone that's going to shut up shop, that's going to be a bit of a destroyer in the middle of the park. He can kind of do that, like Gravenberch can as well, but maybe I feel like we need a specialist in that role now. Not someone that can just play that role, but can also play other roles. I feel like we need just one specialist number 6, and then we can have these other players as well. And if we are selling the likes of McAllister and Jones, there's no reason why Nemeka can't be the second midfielder that we sign. But I feel like the priority has to be get that number 6 in, like a Puwadi, Lamine Kamara, whoever the club feels like is the right fit for us. Get them through the door once, and then we can start looking at other midfielders. But in terms of the talent, he's definitely very talented, and definitely want to look out for in the future because I feel like he'll definitely make waves if he doesn't get that move this summer. Uh, if he does, I'm sure Dortmund will probably ask for more than 50 million due to his stock rising as the days go on. So let's see what happens for Mecca in terms of his future. Another player that we've been linked with in the past has made an announcement that he would like to leave his current club, which is Tottenham Hotspurs, and he wants to start a new challenge. And apparently, Liverpool are listed as one of the clubs interested because of our previous links with the player. My take on this rumor, I'm not the biggest fan of Bergvall. He's decent at best, but for me, not good enough to be a Liverpool player. I know there was a match where we played against him and he showed a bit of shithousery, but it's not because of that in terms of why I don't want him to sign. I just don't think he's the profile we need. I don't think he's good enough. I don't think he has the quality to improve. I don't feel like he's the right fit for us in terms of Liverpool Football Club. So for me, I feel like there's better options out there when it comes to midfielders, especially box to box midfielders. So for me, this one's a no. I don't think we should pursue Bergvall, but you guys can let me know in the chat. Um, on to the next rumor, and it's the final one for today, and it's regarding a player named Andrea Batshuayi. Now, apparently, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Paris FC are working on a deal to sign the 17-year-old versatile attacking midfielder. He has received identical offers from Liverpool and Arsenal, so he's weighing up his options at the minute. Whereas Paris FC are also trying to convince Batshuayi to join them, as they are guaranteeing him first team football immediately if he arrives. So his representatives are in dialogue right now, and they will make a final decision in terms of where Batshuayi will be playing his football for next season. So my thoughts on the player, I'll be honest, I didn't know much about him before I saw this rumor. Watched a couple compilations. Similarities with Kvaratskhelia, I understand. I'm not saying he's definitely that type of player. He definitely has elements of his skill set in terms of his dribbling, his skill and his awareness on the pitch, especially on the left hand side. But I still feel like this player is very raw. I don't think he's ready for first team football. And if he was to join Liverpool, he'll literally be playing under 21s for about at least another season. And he'll need to bulk up, be a bit more physically ready for the tenacity of the Premier League. And then we'll see, if he's able to cut it. But for me, talented player, I just don't think he's ready for the first team. I don't know what the transfer fee is in regards to his valuation. But of course, it does look like Liverpool are signing players for the future. But do we need another left-sided player for the future? I don't know. That would be my reservation in regards to his move. But hey, let's see what happens. But it's definitely a name worth remembering because I'm sure we'll see him playing for Georgia for years to come. So let's see where he makes his move in the end. That is the final rumor. I'm just going to read some of the comments and then we shall close the show. Martin says Man United will struggle next season. He thinks they will finish in 8th place. I need to see what they do because they will be spending a lot of money. They need to sign at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 midfielders because they're quite light in that department. If they've already got Edison, it looks like they could be getting Mateus Fernandez. For me, those two are great signings, and I'm not even just saying it for the sake of it. Those are 2 players I would love to see at Liverpool. That's the kind of caliber players they are. So for me, it'll be interesting to see what they do, and then we can kind of base our opinions on that. Wayne says, "Who got to win the World Cup, Aussie?" I think France or Spain, and you got a minor. You're backing. I'm backing Cape Verde. So for me, I did a World Cup prediction show. I'm going for France. I think that's the team that needs to be displayed if anyone wants to surpass them. So for me, France are the ones to beat, and I think they will win the World Cup this campaign. In regards to other team or like a dark horse, I think is what you're referring to. Um, Ivory Coast look quite strong. Norway is another one that could be a dark horse. Um, but yeah, some good teams out there today. So let's see, in terms of what the future holds in regards to the World Cup. But for me, I'm predicting France to win the competition. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Shout out to Ozan, shout out to Double D, shout out to Wayne, shout out to Reese, and shout out to Martin for your comments. Appreciate your engagement as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming shows, we will be doing live watch-alongs across this week. I've got one scheduled for tomorrow. Who is playing tomorrow? Let me just refresh my memory. It will be England versus Ghana. Of course, how am I going to forget that? So we'll be doing a live watch along for that game tomorrow. And then we've got another one on Wednesday. That will be Scotland versus Brazil. And then we've got Ecuador versus Germany on Thursday. And we've got Norway versus France on Friday. But of course, I'm not just doing watch alongs this week. I will be doing Liverpool content as well. So if there's any breaking news or if there's any transfer rumors that need to be discussed, we will definitely do these shows most likely after the watch alongs. So make sure to tune in and present your questions or any points you want to raise. Feel free to get involved in a live chat. And if you're watching live, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe. I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.